Welcome back to our governance professionalism posts as our free community service. Again, we're looking at a very current issue in the news, which is the issue arising for governance professionals when they're challenged, when there's a threat to governance professionalism and their roles. Here are two examples. One which gives a case of a professional who leaves in protest against adversity, and one who attempts to stay and do their duties. David, I'm just going to put up this slide here so you can have a look at it. So the first one is related to 60 Minutes, where the executive producer felt that their editorial integrity was being challenged due to a merger by their owner, the Paramount parent company. So 60 Minutes Last Minute was called on the 27th of April. It's about the resignation of Bill Owens, the executive producer of 60 Minutes. He'd been there for 13 or more years as executive producer and 20 or more years with CBS News. Anyway, he protested over how its parent company, Paramount, began to supervise our content in new ways, pending the American president's approval of the proposed merger. Now, thanks to Brian Tyler Cohen, who posted this, it's quite an interesting situation where rather than have editorial interference, he decided to be a whistleblower by leaving. What's your comment on that, David?
Thanks, Cole. Now, again, we have highlighted in previous videos that we are not going to comment specifically on any individual case or circumstances or make any sort of personal observations on governments, on individuals. What we're going to talk about here is the general principle that this example may highlight, and that is the ability to provide frank and fearless advice that may not necessarily be what governments want to hear, other commercial interests may not want to hear. And the issue here is, how do we protect those individuals who are seen to be acting in the public interest? And again, we're not going to make specific comment about this particular situation, but let's keep it at a general principle level of someone who is speaking out, maybe a whistleblower. And in some countries like Australia, there is whistleblowing protection for those individuals. How effective they are is can sometimes be problematic. But let's think about this. If you are a professional and you are making good judgments and people don't like what they're hearing, and they want to suppress, they want to sanitize, they don't want the truth to come out. And assuming you have an evidence-based analysis of what you believe is in the public interest that the public wants to know, where we're coming from is that governance professionals need more protection than simple whistleblowing legislation or media coverage or anything else. If governments attempt to suppress information, to not tell the truth, then I believe we need professional associations that are membership based, that protect their members in some way. And this comes back to what I've been talking about and what Colin's been talking about, is the importance of professional standards for governments, professional standards for companies, for not-for-profits, for public services, and specific judgment standards. And so I want you to think about a situation where someone has been professional standard accredited, all right, in the workplace. So it's evidence-based. They've looked at the workplace. They've looked at your assigned responsibilities, and this might be an individual or group, and they have provided some sort of certification. Now, my paper on professionally governing Australia, which is titled should Australians be concerned about how the country is governed, you will see in the appendixes C and D certifications, the type of certifications that can be made of governments, of individuals, and whatever. And the point is here is if you have been professional standard accredited and judgment certified, and it is workplace evidence based, and then someone is attempting to remove you and replace you with someone who's a non-professional, then I think it's the responsibility of professional associations to provide that level of assurance. And if it looks as though there's an exercise in dumbing down, suppression, or whatever, then depending on the circumstances, I think the professional association can decide what it wants to do to protect that member, and not and rather that member suffer some reputational damage from having to resign, of whether it be voluntary or forced resignation. I think there is some professional, and this is where we're coming from. If you have professional standard accreditation, judgment certification, again, have a look at my judgments for governments that I provided in the paper, Appendix B, and the professional standards for governments, which are in Appendix A of should Australians be concerned about how their country is being governed. That's an example, a generic example of that sort of thing. And I think trust is a major issue in our society. And that's what is coming through in surveys by OECD on trust in government, trust in business. And I think the key to this is to have professionalism demonstrated, proven trustworthiness performed by professional standards accreditation and workplace judgment certification. I'm not saying it should be mandated. I don't believe you can mandate professionalism, because I think professionalism comes from the soul. It can be incentivized for people to seek these standards accreditation. I don't believe it should be mandated, but I think it should be there as an option by professional associations and standard setters and regulators to encourage this, so that we do not, so those people who are proven governance professionals are not subject to this sort of reputational damage and suffer personal loss. I think that's not in the principles of justice and fairness of our society, and they are doing the right thing by speaking out.
The next slide is actually another aspect. You would know, being an internal auditor and external auditor, and Australia's had some debate about the independent commissions on corruption. In America, they have the inspectors general under the executive branch appointed to various departments to provide that internal and external accountability, referencing, auditing, etc. So here's an example where the USDA Agriculture Department Inspector General Phyllis Fong refused to leave when the White House terminated the Inspector General back in January. Very interesting situation. What are your comments there in relation to professionalism?
Thanks, Cole. And again, we're not going to specifically talk about any particular cases, but again, let's bring this up to a general principle. One of the things we want, and again, it's lined up to what I've been talking about Frank and Phyllis' advice, is that governments, unchecked through ineffective lines of defence, can what is called hollow out public sector agencies, particularly those that are investigative, scrutinisers, inspectorates, auditor generals, anti-corruption commissions. They can, what we call, and this is what I referred to in my paper on value destroying governments, as hollowing out these sorts of functions, which has the effect of alarm bell muting. Alarm bell muting because there's not the funds, the competence of those organisations have been compromised, Political loyalty is rewarded over merit to provide professional advice. And again, what we need is governments should not, as a matter of principle, have any oversight, control over agencies that should provide independent advice on what's going on, whether it be performance audits, whether it be financial audits, whether it be anti-corruption. No, governments should not be indirectly hollowing out these agencies and causing good people to leave, which obviously eventually means they may achieve mediocrity and underperformance to the detriment of free speech, of justice and fairness, and of frank and fearless advice on what's actually going on and truth-telling.
We don't have the answers to this. There have been some examples in Australia where that's been debated. When in Victoria, the government there tried to privatise the Auditor General's office, there was quite an outcry because people believe they need that independent audit requirements. So we have more to say on this, and David's papers elaborate some of these issues. So thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to your comments and further aspects that you can discuss with us using our contacts through the Governance Professionalism on Substack and YouTube channel, as well as our LinkedIn pages. Thanks very much for listening. We look forward to hearing from you and any comments about what you would like to hear from us. Thanks very much.